I came home from college expecting hugs and home-cooked meals. Instead, I found a SOLD sign on the lawn. They didn't just sell the house. They erased me.
I came home from college expecting hugs and home-cooked meals. Instead, I found a sold sign on the lawn, and everything I owned stuffed into black garbage bags on the curb. They didn't just sell the house, they erased me. If stories of silent betrayal and quiet revenge move you, hit that subscribe button now and join us for more powerful, emotional stories you'll never forget. My name is Jade Monroe, and I thought coming home would feel like opening a familiar book to your favorite chapter. But that morning, all I saw was a sold sign stabbed into the front yard of what used to be my house. I stood there for a full minute, frozen on the sidewalk, with my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, blinking like the world might change if I stared long enough. The two-story colonial with blue shutters and the porch swing Grandma installed was still there, but it was hollow. Dead, like a body with no pulse. The grass was taller than I remembered. The wind tossed dry leaves across the driveway like it was helping to clear away the past. Except the past hadn't gone anywhere. It was just shoved to the curb in black plastic bags, taped and bloated, sagging under the weight of what used to be my life. I dropped my bag and walked up to them. The first one ripped a little as I opened it. Textbooks, old clothes, some with the sleeves inside out, like someone had shoved them in without care. One bag had a pair of my sneakers on top. Another had my worn-out high school hoodie, the one Grandma Ellie stitched back together after I tore it during a snowball fight with Ashley. I looked around. No car. No note. Nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mom, didn't think you were coming back. Ashley needed the room. You should understand. It's been months. That was it. No punctuation. No apology. I stared at the screen, then back at the trash bags. My throat tightened, but the tears didn't come. Not yet. A voice startled me from behind. Jade? I turned. Mrs. Callahan from next door. Same floral sweater, same garden gloves. She stepped closer, concern furrowing her brow. Honey, are you okay? They didn't tell you? I shook my head. They moved last week, she said. Said something about Florida. I thought you were already gone for good. I wanted to laugh. Gone for good? Like I was some stray they finally gave up on. Mrs. Callahan hesitated. Your mom said you were too busy with college, that you'd understand. That word again. I crouched down and opened another bag. Inside were my journals, crushed under canned food and tangled chargers. One of them was damp. My grandma's letters. I ripped the journal out, flipping pages, but the ink had bled. The words blurred, like someone had smudged my memories on purpose. Do you need help? Mrs. Callahan asked softly. I stood up, breathing through my nose so I wouldn't scream. No, I said. I'm done asking for help. I dragged 3 bags to the sidewalk bench and sat down. My heart pounded like I'd just run uphill, not from exhaustion, but rage. Not loud, fiery rage. Cold, deliberate rage. They didn't just sell the house. They threw me away with it. But this wasn't the end. This was the start of something else. Something they wouldn't see coming. The first night back, I didn't sleep on a bed. I crashed on Mel's couch, wrapped in a hoodie that still smelled like damp leaves and betrayal. Melanie Rivers, my best friend since sophomore year, didn't ask for details. She just opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "You're staying." No argument. Her apartment was small, 2 rooms, paper-thin walls, and a finicky heater, but it felt more like home than the house I grew up in ever did. That night, we sat on the carpet eating leftover Thai food from the fridge. "So," Mel said between bites of Pad See Ew, "they actually sold the house without telling you?" I nodded. I came back and found my life stuffed in garbage bags. Literal garbage bags, like I was trash. Mel winced. "That's unforgivable." I said nothing. My throat was still raw from holding everything in. "Didn't Grandma Ellie leave you anything? I remember she used to say that house would be yours someday." I stared down at my noodles. That house had been my grandmother's. She raised me until high school, before Mom remarried and insisted I rejoin the real family. After Grandma passed last year, things got quiet, cold. "I don't know," I said. "I never saw a will. I figured if there was one, Mom would handle it." Mel looked at me like I'd just told her I handed a fox my only hen. She said, "You trusted Lisa Monroe to handle your inheritance?" she said. "She's still my mom," I muttered, though the words tasted like rust. Mel rolled her eyes. "No, she's your origin story villain. There's a difference." That night, while Mel snored softly from the other room, I lay awake on the couch with my laptop balanced on my knees. My fingers hovered over the keys as I opened a search bar. Monroe Estate, Probate, Florida. Property title history, 1832 Hollow Creek Lane. Wills and trusts, Grandma Ellie Monroe. The deeper I dug, the colder I felt. I found a sale record for the house, dated 4 weeks ago. A fast cash offer, closed in less than 10 days. And then I found something else, something that made me sit up. Grandma's will had been filed, but not by my mother, by a probate lawyer named Ruth Anderson, 2 towns over. I clicked the PDF and scrolled down. "To my granddaughter, Jade Monroe, I leave the deed to 1832 Hollow Creek Lane and all remaining assets in my personal account." I stopped breathing. The house was mine. The house had always been mine, and they sold it anyway. They must have forged something, signed in her name, maybe declared me unreachable. I didn't know how yet, but they'd stolen what was mine, with no explanation and no shame. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my ears. They thought I'd walk away. They thought I'd accept the garbage bags. They thought I wouldn't fight. I shut the laptop gently, set it on the floor, and pulled the blanket tighter around me. That was the last night I cried. The next morning, I called Ruth Anderson. Ruth Anderson's office sat between a dry cleaner and a vape shop, one of those old strip malls with faded signs and a flickering street lamp in the parking lot. But inside, marble tile, soft jazz, a receptionist who smiled without blinking. "Ms. Monroe," she said as she greeted me, standing behind a mahogany desk. She looked like someone who'd negotiated peace treaties, or at least very expensive divorces. We shook hands. "I've been expecting this day," she said, leading me into her office. "I'm just surprised it took this long." My heart was pounding. "Did you represent my grandmother?" She nodded. Ellie Monroe was sharp, fiercely independent. She made it very clear her home was to go to you solely. She opened a red folder on her desk and slid it toward me. Legal documents, witnessed, notarized, clean. "Then how did my mom sell it?" I asked. Ruth folded her hands. It appears your mother filed a claim that you had permanently vacated the premises and could not be reached, with your stepfather listed as joint power of attorney, signed just 2 weeks after your grandmother's passing. My stomach turned. She forged it, I whispered. She'll say she didn't, that you were unreachable and the house was costing too much in upkeep. I sat there shaking. Rage clawed at my chest, but I swallowed it. What can I do? I asked. Ruth leaned back in her chair. You can sue, but court battles are long and public. Or, she paused, then slid me another folder. There's a faster way. The house was resold within a week. The new owners, house flippers, already listed it again, post-renovation. You could buy it back. I stared at her. With what money? She smiled thinly. Ellie didn't just leave you the house. There's a trust, a small one, but enough to make an offer. I stared at the number on the bottom of the page. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. My fingers tightened on the paper. I'll buy it. Ruth nodded. And your family? I looked her straight in the eye. They won't know. Not until I'm ready. That evening, I sat on Mel's kitchen counter while she stirred boxed mac and cheese. You're buying the house back? She said, her mouth hanging open. Yes. With your inheritance? I nodded. She grinned like I just told her I robbed a bank for justice. That's the most beautiful kind of revenge I've ever heard. It's not revenge, I said, but it was. Not the fiery, screaming kind. The kind that unfolds in silence. One paper, one signature, one key at a time. The next few weeks moved fast. Ruth negotiated the sale quietly. The flippers didn't care who bought it. They just wanted their profit. I signed the papers under a private LLC with my initials reversed, a legal veil. The deed was mine. I walked through the remodeled house alone. Fresh paint, laminate floors, a kitchen island that didn't belong. But beneath it all, the bones were still there. I stood in my old bedroom, now a glossy guest room with beige curtains, and I smiled. They sold me out, so I bought myself back. The day I got the keys, it rained. Not a storm, just that kind of steady drizzle that makes the world look like it's holding its breath. I unlocked the door of the house, my house, and stepped inside. The floors were shinier than I remembered, the cabinets newer, but the air still smelled like dust and lemon-scented cleaning spray, like the old days when Grandma would wipe down every surface on Sunday afternoons and hum songs from the 60s. I sat on the kitchen counter, opened my phone, and started typing. Group chat, Monroe family. Hey, I'm in town, just got back. Want to catch up? Come by the old place. I have a surprise. Saturday at 5. Bring Ashley. No emojis, no punctuation, just sharp and clean. I stared at it for a second, then hit send. Saturday came fast. I spent the morning rearranging furniture, subtle things, moved the couch a few inches, hung up a framed photo of Grandma Ali's smiling with me at my high school graduation, lit a lavender candle she used to keep in her bathroom cabinet. By 4:45, I was ready. The doorbell rang at 5:07. I opened the door slowly. There they were. Mom in her beige cardigan, lips pursed. Tom, arms crossed like he was still on patrol, and Ashley, wearing designer sunglasses indoors. Wow, Mom said, stepping inside. They really fixed it up. I nodded. Yeah, Flippers did a decent job. Ashley flopped onto the couch without asking. What's the surprise? New boyfriend? Secret baby? I ignored her. Tom looked around suspiciously. So, who owns it now? You house-sitting or something? I turned and met his eyes. Calm, solid. No, I own it. Silence. Mom blinked. What? I bought it, I said, under a legal trust. It's in my name. again. Ashley sat up, but Mom said the sale was final. It was, and then it wasn't. Mom's voice cracked. Jade, that house was mine, I interrupted, per Grandma's will, the one you ignored, or maybe forged around. Her face flushed. You don't know what you're saying. I do, I said. You didn't think I'd come back, so you threw me away. But I came back stronger. Tom took a step forward. Now wait a minute. No, I cut him off. You don't get to wait. You don't get to talk. You let her do it, and you watched. Ashley stood, her voice sharper. Why didn't you tell us you were back? I looked at her slowly. You replaced me, on purpose, and you liked it. She hesitated. I turned back to my mom. I invited you here so you'd see what you lost. Not the house, me. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. We thought you were too busy, always distant. I was working, studying, trying to become someone you'd respect. I shook my head. But it was never about that. It was about control, and you lost it. She opened her mouth. I stopped her with a final line. You don't need to say anything. I've already said everything I needed, with a deed, not words. Then I walked to the door, opened it, and stood aside. They left without looking back. Ashley slammed the car door. Tom muttered something under his breath. But Mom, she glanced over her shoulder, just once. That look, the regret in her eyes, wasn't enough, but it was a start. I closed the door gently, locked it, and finally breathed. For 3 days, I didn't hear from them. No texts, no calls, no angry emails accusing me of betrayal. Silence. It was blissful. I spent those days unpacking, not just boxes, but memories. I found an old ceramic mug Grandma had painted with my name on it, a dried-out lavender sachet hidden behind a drawer, a small Polaroid of us sitting on the back porch, eating ice cream in our pajamas. I hung it on the fridge. This house had once been theirs by force. Now it was mine, by choice. Still, every now and then, I'd glance at my phone, wondering if regret would echo back through the silence. It didn't. Not yet. By Friday, the first crack appeared. Ashley emailed me. Not a long message, just 3 lines. I don't know why you hate me. I didn't ask them to leave you out. I didn't even know about the house being yours. But I'm sorry you feel that way. Sorry you feel that way. I closed the laptop and laughed, one of those dry, bitter laughs that feels like a cough of disappointment. That night, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. The sidewalks hadn't changed. Same cracks in the pavement, same flickering streetlight on the corner. But the way people looked at me had. Mrs. Callahan waved from her porch. "Glad you're back," she called. I smiled. Me too. I stopped by the old swing Grandma used to push me on. The chain had rusted slightly, but it still creaked the same way. I sat, the cold of the metal seeping through my jeans, and let the night air wrap around me. And I thought about how easy it would have been to scream, to explode, to post it all online, drag them through the dirt, destroy what was left of their pride. But I hadn't. Instead, I'd taken something intangible, my dignity, and planted it back into the ground they tried to sell. Now it was growing roots. The next day, a letter came in the mail. From Tom. Typed, signed. Jade, I won't say we were right. We weren't. I won't pretend this didn't hurt you. It did. I stayed silent because I thought it would blow over. It didn't. You've always been stronger than all of us combined. I just didn't know how to face that. Still don't. I'm sorry, truly. No return address, no phone number. But for the first time in years, I believed him. Later that night, Mel called me. Did I just see your mom at the grocery store crying in the soup aisle? I sighed. Maybe. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled faintly. Maybe she did. Do you feel better? She asked. I thought about it. About the rage, the loss, the hollow ache, and about the house, the quiet, the peace. Yeah, I said. I feel real. And that was enough. It was Saturday morning when I heard the knock. Not the sharp kind that demands entry, a softer rhythm, hesitant. I opened the door, and there she was, my mother, wearing a beige windbreaker and a look I hadn't seen in years. Not smug, not disappointed, just tired. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest like it was the last piece of armor she had left. "Hi," she said, her voice cracked. I didn't move. "You're early." She nodded. I didn't think I'd have the courage if I waited till 5. A beat of silence passed. "Can I come in?" she asked. I opened the door wider, but said nothing. She stepped inside like someone entering a museum, cautious not to disturb anything. She looked around. Her eyes landed on the photo of me and Grandma on the fridge. Her mouth twitched. Then she sat on the edge of the couch, the envelope still pressed to her chest. "I read the will," she said finally. I crossed my arms. "Took you long enough." I lied, she admitted, about everything. No excuses, no deflection, just that. I told myself you wouldn't want the house, that you were too busy with your future. But the truth is, I didn't want you to have it. Not because you didn't deserve it, but because you reminded me I'd never be what Ellie was to you. My chest tightened. She glanced around. You made this house into something warm again. She'd be proud. I didn't reply. She held out the envelope. "What's that?" "Letters from your grandmother. Ones I found in her drawer after she passed. I never opened them. I couldn't. I didn't want to know if she loved you more." She set the envelope on the coffee table and stood. "I won't stay. I know I'm not the mother you needed." She turned toward the door. "Wait," I said. She froze. "I don't need a mother," I said quietly. "I needed honesty. And today, you finally gave me that." She nodded slowly. Her eyes brimmed, but no tears fell. She walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Later that night, I opened the envelope. There were 5 letters, all addressed to me, all written in Grandma Ellie's familiar slanted handwriting. I read the first one. "Jade, if you're reading this, it means you came back. I never doubted you would. You've always had more heart than the rest of us combined. This house was never just wood and paint. It was a promise. Yours now. Keep it safe. Keep yourself safe." I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because, for the first time in a long, long time, it healed something. A month passed. The house no longer felt like a battleground. It felt lived in. I'd repainted the guest room a soft sage green, planted herbs on the windowsill, replaced the LED bulbs with warm lights that made the kitchen glow like a campfire when the sun dipped. And I bought a table. Not just any table, a round wooden one, the kind Grandma always wanted but could never afford. It sat by the window now, catching morning light like it belonged there all along. That Saturday, I invited 3 people over. Not family, friends, real ones. Mel, of course, Tomas, a coworker who once drove across town just to bring me cough syrup, and Angie, an art student who I used to tutor and who brought a bouquet of wildflowers because you just looked like someone who needed color. We cooked pasta, laughed too loud, spilled wine, and shared stories like we were trading currency. At one point, I looked up from my plate and just watched. No drama, no tension, just people who saw me, not for what I could give or represent, but for who I was. "Jade?" Mel asked, raising a glass. "Yeah? You look different. How so?" "Lighter," she said, "like you're finally not holding your breath." I laughed softly. Maybe I'm not. They all toasted to that. After they left, I sat alone at the table. The wildflowers leaned toward the window, still catching the last rays of orange dusk. I thought about what I'd built. Not a house, not revenge, but peace. I wasn't waiting for apologies anymore. I wasn't hoping they'd understand. I had made a place where I didn't have to shrink, and it was mine. I wrote something down in my journal before bed. When they threw me out, I thought I'd lost everything. But now I see they gave me the space I needed to become someone they could never erase. It was a Tuesday morning when the final piece arrived. A small envelope, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a card, plain, soft cream paper, from Ashley. "I'm not good at this. Words, truth, owning my mess. But here it is. You were right about all of it. I knew you were left out, and I didn't stop it. I thought it meant I'd finally matter if I took your place. But all I did was prove I was never strong enough to build my own. You didn't have to let me fall, but you did. And honestly, I think I needed that." At the bottom, just one more sentence. "This isn't me asking to come back. This is me saying thank you for walking away." I stared at the card for a long time, then tucked it between Grandma's letters. Not for safekeeping, just for closure. Later that week, I stood at the airport gate, passport in hand. Boarding pass, Rome, Paris, Amsterdam. A trip I'd never taken. A trip I once planned, for them. Now it was mine. Not a gesture of love, not a bribe for attention, just a gift to myself. I glanced around the terminal, watched couples, families, solo travelers rushing to their gates. I sipped my coffee slowly. No rush, no expectations. They say revenge is sweet, but they're wrong. Revenge is quiet. It's choosing not to reply, not to explain, not to return. It's standing in the ruins of what they tried to take from you and building something beautiful. Not for them, for you. As I boarded the plane, the final words of Grandma's last letter echoed in my mind. "You never had to earn your place, Jade. You always had it. Now make sure the world sees you the way I always did. Worth loving. Worth everything." And I smiled, because for the first time, I believed it.